The show is called Time Out. I'm your host, Chris Amadeo. I'm here with my best friend and co-host, Tom Blass. How's it going, buddy?
How you doing?
So this is our first show. We finally did it, huh?
It took us long enough, but here we are.
16 years, Tom and I have been friends. And I think we've come up with about countless dozens of ideas to get ourselves known. Who the hell would have thought it was a podcast, man?
Yeah, my money wasn't on that, but hey.
So we actually when did we come up with Time Out? This is like, it's almost like a throwback, trying to come up with a name for this thing.
I want to say it was like 07, 08, around there.
It was freshman year of college. Was it our first trip to Oneonta, or was it the St. Patrick's Day excursion?
I think those were both one and the same.
It was, wasn't it?
Yeah, but so long now. I feel like an old man.
And I do remember that day. It's crazy how there's some days from 15 years ago, and it goes all the way back to college, that I do remember that day. It's like in my mind, not just a piece of the day, but the whole day just stays with me. And I remember when we were talking to, we were in a dorm room with like 5 or 6 people, and we were singing Shine, one of the best rap songs ever, by the way.
Yes.
I don't know if singing is the word. Should I say rapping Shine or singing? What do you call
We were
it?
doing our best.
We were doing our best. I mean, you really could beatbox back then.
Yeah. That's something I didn't retain.
No? Got bad over the years?
Yeah. What are you going to do?
We were doing that. We stopped in the middle of the song, and then what was that kid's name? Was it Brian?
I want to say it was. He looked like a Brian. If that wasn't his name.
And I guess we wanted to just talk to him and find out about his life. He was kind of cool, right? Like, he was like, he always had like stories. Who knew if they were made up? Because people want to be, they want us to think we're, they're cool. So people make up shit in front of us so that they come off cooler than they really are.
Yeah, I mean that guy back then was telling me that he was an anonymous. He was like the first person I ever met. He was the first time I'd ever heard about it, and he was talking about it like it was this like internet group of super criminals, just go around like vigilante justice, righting wrongs and stuff. And I remember he was saying it to me, and I thought to myself, like, man, this would be so cool if they didn't let people like you in.
And then I think what we wanted to do was just ask him a bunch of questions. We wanted to, but everyone else in the room was talking, and we wanted to ask him questions in front of everyone to get answers to his claims and what he does. And we were getting very annoyed. No one was paying attention to us. And I think you just said time out. Like, you just or were maybe you and I were arguing. I don't know what it was, but out of nowhere, you just said time out. And then I think I replied to you, the show's called Time Out. Brian, come over here. We got a bunch of questions for you. So that was how we came up with this. So really, this show is just 16 years late, past due. Maybe not 16, maybe 15, 14.
That was a 14-year timeout.
14-year timeout. We're glad that we're finally doing this. It's the first thing. I mean, I don't know. You've started countless books. I've started countless movie scripts, and it seems like this is the first thing that we've decided to wake up and be like, let's do this. So we're glad that we have everyone listening, and this is our show. Every week is going to be slightly different. This particular episode, our podcast pilot, so to say, is going to be very different from the episodes to come. And moving forward, we are going to have guests who are somehow either a small business owner or in a realm of self-employment, maybe even a sales role, that they may be W-2, but they mostly rely on their self-promotion. So every week will be a little bit different. It's going to be people from very different industries. And, we really want to know how that industry is.
Focus on the stories. Everybody's got a story to tell. And I feel like that's the important part, is to get the stories behind the people who are doing things a little bit differently.
This particular episode, though, it's like, who do you have on for your first episode? And normally first episodes, in my opinion, suck. So we didn't want to have to make a guest feel that way to be part of this terrible pilot that we're having you listen to. But, some of the greatest shows have terrible pilots, like Breaking Bad and BoJack Horseman, which I know a lot of people will say those were great pilots, but I didn't, I actually didn't get into Breaking Bad until like episode 3 or 4. It took me like a few to get into it.
Yeah. I wasn't actually hooked until probably the second season started. I felt like that show started a little slow.
Even Mad Men, right? Did you watch that one?
I tried so hard to get into Mad Men. I remember I was, in my early 20s, and it was a show about like just these guys in the 60s who were just, crushing it. I thought, yes, that's a show for me. And I'll be goddamned, I could not bother to keep up with Don Draper. I didn't care what the hell he was doing. He was so boring to me.
I couldn't get past I think I watched four or five episodes. I'm like, this shit's boring. And I know it probably got better, but it didn't grip me at all.
I'll tell you another show opposite of that started out real good and quickly went down the tubes. American Horror Story. I thought the first season of American Horror Story was pretty good. I was wrapped up, I was hooked in at that point. And then the second season came out and it felt like 6 Stephen King novels stuffed into one show. And I'm like, Jesus, I can't even keep track of what's going on here. Like, what? There's a ghost, there's a demon, there's an alien, there's a murderer. Like, what universe is this taking place in?
The one thing with American Horror Story that's a little bit different, though, is that you got to get a whole series in one season. So it's like it's episodic. It's episodic seasons. It's seasonotic. You have to have a good pilot. If you have a bad pilot on a show that's only going for a season, there's next season. So if this one kind of isn't great, I can try it again next year. But like with a show, though, it's like pilot. You can't judge it's like judging a book by its cover. It's judging a show by its pilot.
Yeah, there was a lot of shows. I remember, especially growing up in the late 90s, there was kind of a subpar sitcom boom that was happening on all the big channels, and there were shows that were just, you could tell from the first episode that they were just so bad. It was like, who sat in a boardroom and like listen to this? Like, there was a show called Rock Me Baby, and it was about I think Dennis Miller was in it. Even it was like a show about like a rock star family, and it had like third grade level jokes in it, the whole pilot, and there was just nothing engaging about it. It was like lukewarm soup as a show. And I remember sitting there thinking, like, who thought this was a good idea? Who actually signed off on? Did anybody sign off on this? Did this just get sneaked into the room? Like, put this on and see what happens.
They must get so many different pilot shows. Let's just see what sticks sometimes. Like this looks terrible, but people enjoy some terrible television.
They just tape a bunch of titles to the wall and just close their eyes and throw a dart at it. Like, oh, here's one about a guy who owns a pizza place, but his parents live in a sewer. Right. Fuck it, why not?
Yeah, it's like the creation of a Family Guy episode. You ever see that South Park when they were coming up with the Family Guy episodes, where it's just like I think it was a bunch of seals or walruses in a pool with like the different manapedes, and they're just like, all right, let's see. So I guess at some point when there wasn't a lot of creativity, they came up with some of these random shows that stick. I mean, look at that show Dinosaurs, right? It's just like, let's make a children's show in the 90s with a bunch of puppet looking dinosaurs.
That's a good point, actually. There are some shows that for some reason, like, they're more than the sum of their parts. And I feel like Dinosaurs was one of those shows. Like, it didn't make any sense that it was like kind of a sitcom, but I mean, the suits had to cost like a lot of money to make. And I mean, like, it just kind of had all the ingredients of something that the network would have been like, no. Like, no. I don't understand what the obsession is with remaking things in this day and age. It just seems like every show, every movie is like either a rehash or just a blatant remake of something. You can't just let things exist on their own. You got to remake it. Like James Bond is a good example. Like, just Jesus Christ, let James Bond die. He's like a relic of an age that's no longer around, and like, just let him die. Make a new spy. How hard is that?
I would say, I guess you could make it, but isn't James Bond just like the name of the agent, or is it 007's the name of the agent and James Bond is a real name? Like, is his name actually James Bond, or is it like a code name? So like, there are several people that go by James Bond, and maybe James Bond just does die, and it's, we need a new James Bond, then we need a new 007.
I don't know that Ian Fleming ever came out and said that, but I've heard that theory before, that James Bond is just a name, and 007 is just like a title or whatever, and the actual person there is just kind of assuming the role of James Bond.
Who's your dream James Bond?
I mean, honestly, I think my boy Ryan Gosling could kill it. I think he could crush some James fucking Bond, man. Because he's sly enough. He'd keep it together, but he's also, dapper enough. He cleans up well enough in his suit. He's a pretty put together guy. But at the same time, like maybe he adds like the new element of James Bond. Like James Bond's a little snarkier, Like
after that movie Drive, I got a lot of respect for Ryan Gosling. I thought that movie was fantastic. That's one of my. I mean, I probably put that in my top 25. I thought that movie was great.
Drive was a good movie. Drive was the movie that all young guys who were into vaporwave decided to base their personalities off of for a good, like, probably 4 years there.
Really, it's that much of a cult classic? I thought Drive was like just like one of those hidden gems.
Oh no, dude. Well, I mean, like, yeah, it definitely has a cult following. I remember reading a post online about a guy who was he went to his local diner. He started dressing like Ryan Gosling in the movie Drive. He started going to his local diner and getting like a slice of cherry pie or something. And eventually, like the waitress who works there at night, who's like always the one serving him, starts talking to him, and he asks her out. And then like a year later, they're still dating. And he was like, my entire relationship is based on me adopting the persona of Ryan Gosling in one movie.
Did he have the leather jacket too? It was like a red leather jacket, right?
Yeah, no, he had the leather jacket. He was like brooding. He had like one word answers to everything.
Oh my God. It's a little ridiculous. I'm trying to think of the other movies of Ryan Gosling I like.
He was good in The Big Short, man. The Big Short was fantastic.
I mean, I could see Tom Hardy doing it. I think he would be a pretty good James Bond. He can do all that action stuff. And
Tom Hardy's good as an action guy, but like James Bond's got to be like I don't know. I feel like Tom Hardy doesn't. I feel like he's got like a dog's vocal cords. Like he doesn't talk. He like growls. Like when he talks, he everything's like, well, we're gonna have to go back the way we came. It's like, I don't know. Watching Mad Max, I was like, this guy doesn't have a voice.
You know what though? But with the way like the future of like PG-13 action movies go, like you have that whole Fast and the Furious stuff, just trying to outdo the last one with crazy stunts and all that stuff. I almost feel like between Fast and Furious, that Mission Impossible, and then James Bond, like they just have to outdo each other with crazy action stunts. And that's where it's just like the next actor is, they got to do. I don't see Ryan Gosling doing those crazy action stunts that I do like with Tom Hardy or something like that. I mean, I actually wasn't really a big fan of Daniel Craig.
No,
he's all right. The only reason why I go to like James Bond movies is because of the villain. The villain has to be good.
They drop the ball on like almost every villain. Like when your coolest villain is Mads Mikkelsen, it's like maybe somebody's got to do some recasting here.
And I know Christoph Waltz is one of my favorite actors of all time, and I know he was the villain in one of the James Bond movies, and I never saw that one. And I guess it wasn't a good movie. He wasn't in it too long. It's just like, how do you waste him? He was awesome in Inglourious Bastards as a villain. Like that's one of the best villains of all time. And then he was even better in Django with Django's partner. He was such a great role, and you killed it.
Yeah, you squandered the likes of Christoph Waltz. How do you do that? How do you get that guy in the movie and then just like, all right, well, we had to cut all of his scenes, but we got a 2-minute scene of him, threatening somebody. And that's about it. He's villain enough. It's like, see, that's why again, I maintain that the Pierce Brosnan and James Bond movies were superior, because the only person they really squandered, if you could say that, was Sean Bean. And they didn't even, they did what Sean Bean does and they killed him, but he died twice in that movie, remember?
I thought Sean Bean was a villain in Mission Impossible. Was he?
No, Sean Bean was in it wasn't Die Another Day. I think it was Tomorrow Never Dies.
Yeah, I think that's right. You're right. So again, villains to me in those movies are like what brings me, it's what brings me in. You got to have a good villain. I mean, really, I could care less who James Bond is. If the villain is good, I really could care less. Which I guess on our show, where obviously we're not interviewing villains, we're interviewing a different person every week. So even if you think we suck, you're going to have a great guest who's going to give you a lot of information on what they do and why. And then in addition to those shows, we're going to speak a little bit about what I do. And then Tom's going to come on in and talk about some current events and give his opinion on a couple of things, which, I'll gladly chime in. And Tom and I don't see eye to eye all the time. So what we really want to do is have a good balance. And if you don't agree with something we say, it's cool. We still like you. And if we don't agree with you, we still like you. We're cool like that. What do you think my two favorite pilots are?
Two pilots as in ones that we came up with, or
no, ones that were just on TV that were just like, I'm engaged.
Well, I would say pilot of the first season of Fargo, I thought was pretty engaging.
See, I'm gonna say we got it. We can't use that one because Fargo does have a different. Like you could watch season 2 of Fargo and not watch season 1. It's okay. I would almost say Fargo.
If you think about it, that's even more of a challenge for the writers of that show because they got to come up with a pilot each season. That's like even more pressure.
Yeah, but at least they get to work with the new story. It's like, yeah, I only got to engage somebody for. I mean, the one thing I will say, Fargo, I think only did like what 6 or 7 episodes. Did they go through a full 12 episodes or did they jip us?
I feel like the first season was like 12 episodes.
I hate the 10 episode jip seasons. Do you remember way back when like shows came out with like 12, 13, 14 episodes a season?
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, yes. And now it's like they're only getting 10 episodes or less. I don't understand why they made a season only 10 episodes now. Even 8. It's just like, is it a money thing? Like
8 episodes is tough, yeah. I mean, like you got to look at it. I look at it the same way, like when I used to buy CDs, right? If I got a full length LP from a band and then it had 8 songs on it, I was pissed. I don't care how good those 8 songs are. Like, give me 2 filler tracks and make it seem like I'm getting a little more for my money.
Yeah, remember the Blink-182 CDs we used to get back in the day? Yes, I'm guilty. I used to buy Blink-182 CDs, and it was just like a 34-minute album.
Yeah.
I just paid $18.99 for 34 minutes.
I could have just earned a $20 bill and it would have taken more than 34 minutes to totally burn up.
Like you couldn't add like an extra chorus to all the small things, throw it in. Like you couldn't add an extra verse. The verses were like 10 seconds long. You know what though? I will say it, even though it's recorded, and if I have to criminalize myself now, I actually got away with so many free CDs back in the day. You want to know what I used to do?
What'd you do?
So the mall that I went to, they had an FYE on one side and they had a Best Buy on the other side. So what I used to do was I went to FYE, I bought 3 or 4 CDs, went home, I copied them on my computer. I went into FYE and I said, these CDs don't work. 12 years old doing this. And obviously I just thought I was being slick. I didn't know like what I was doing. So now I do. But I used to copy them on my computer, go there and say they didn't work. And they actually gave me a brand new CD unopened. And then what I used to do, I went to Best Buy and I returned it for store credit. And then I bought a bunch of CDs at Best Buy and I did the same exact thing. And then I went to FYE with the unopened CD and lo and behold, I got store credit. So I literally I went back and forth with this. I did that for like a good 2 years. And then out of nowhere, they started opening up the plastic. When I returned
out of nowhere, what could have possibly prompted them to start opening it?
I'd like to think I was the root cause to that. It makes me feel good knowing that it may have been me that actually made Best Buy and FYE open up the plastic.
There's some corporate loss prevention officer just sitting in like a sealed room somewhere, like surrounded by monitors. He's just like chain smoking and panicking, like, how does this keep happening?
But you know what? I'm going to pay $19 for a 35-minute long CD. Like, you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm okay knowing that Blink-182 didn't get my $20. Like, actually, I'm sure they figured out a way to get the $20 and it was a write-off for Best Buy or FYE or something like that. I know they made a lot of money, so I really don't feel bad. If only there were a way to do it with DVDs.
Yeah. If only there were a way to download things off the internet, like at some kind of site where you could torrent it and get entire discographies for free.
I mean, now you can't even do that, right? Like the whole age of like LimeWire is that's been done for a while. So like you can't get anything for free anymore. I mean, but also some of it's just available for so cheap. So like you don't really need it for free.
Well, that's the other side of things, because you know what you don't have anymore is you don't have ownership of any of the music that you listen to anymore. Now everything is subscription based. It's not even just music; it's everything. People don't buy DVDs anymore. People don't buy CDs anymore. People don't like buy movies to digitally download really anymore, or with music. Yeah,
I'm guilty of buying DVDs. I still buy DVDs because I don't want anyone to change my movie.
That's actually a good point, though. Things can be, as long as you don't own the movie and some streaming service somewhere owns the movie. They can add or subtract anything they want from the movie and just put it back up, and they don't even have to tell you.
I mean, I'm not going to admit whether or not I am a fan or not a fan of Donald Trump, but the whole idea of removing him from Home Alone 2, I think is like one of those things. Like you're really gonna like, is it really a thing? Like there's a petition to remove him from Home Alone 2. Like, can you just not touch Home Alone? Like, can you just leave it? I do think the idea of replacing it with today's Macaulay Culkin's funny, but it's just like, did we really get to the point of that we want to remove him from a movie? Like, then you know what? Remove Kevin Spacey from American Beauty.
Oh God, that'd be interesting. Who would you replace him with, though? Replace him with Macaulay Culkin?
I'd replace him with Steve Buscemi.
Oh man, he just goes up to the daughter. Hey, your friend's pretty hot.
That would be really cool, though. Like in the future, it's gotten to the point where, you know, video editing is so great that you can actually replace actors with other people.
You could just deep fake actors into movies that they have no business being in.
That would be great. you remake Face Off, but it's Nicolas Cage and Nicolas Cage. I can't believe they're doing so back on the remake thing. So they're making a sequel to that. They're making Face Off 2, and it's a direct sequel to the original Face Off. I'm super intrigued. That might be one of the private movie theater things I do again. And probably no one will go, but I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
They're going to have Travolta and Nicolas Cage in it again?
Supposedly, they might both be in it. Yeah. Now, if they go the PG-13 route, I'm going to be annoyed. Like, I hope it's one of those, you know, R-rated action movies like the 90s gave us.
Yeah. You know, that really was a golden age of action movies. The 80s and the 90s were the 80s. Like, we're really on the right track. In the 90s, I feel like definitely perfected it. And then in the 2000s, you know what it was? Face Off was not like a gritty movie. It wasn't a movie that was going for like hyper realism. It was just a bullshit action movie that was fun to watch. And there was explosions, and you got to see Nicolas Cage and John Travolta fight each other. And then the 2000s came along, and everything had to be gritty, and like, you know, the cameras had to be jittery, and everything had to be shot on the ground. And you know, I feel like we should go back to the 90s aesthetic of, you know, it's a movie. God damn it, I'm watching a movie. Just make a movie. Don't make it seem like everything's a documentary where, you know, everything's exploding and gritty.
I mean, yeah, Con Air, Broken Arrow, Face Off, and then what's the other? The Rock.
Yeah, The Rock.
And those were just like great action movies. You can't. I mean, and the fact that they're coming out with a sequel to Face Off is just, it's, I don't know, maybe we can get Sean Connery out of retirement. He didn't die, right?
I don't think he did.
Okay. Maybe we can get him out of retirement. He can come up from his grave.
I'm a zombie now.
We can do The Rock, and it's, you know, The Rock 2.
The Rock 2, Escape from the Nursing Home.
Our podcast is going to be broken up in seasons. We're not going to jip you in. We're not going to just do 10 episodes. And we're also not going to jip you with our shitty pilot episode. This season, which I'm going to say is season 1, we're going to give you 12 additional episodes. It's going to be 12 unique interviews. And you're going to follow us through current events over the next 12 weeks. That's if we do an episode a week. Who knows if we're going to be that good. But if it's every other week, then it's going to be a season over the next 24 weeks. I'm going to update you on mortgage stuff.
Real estate's so exciting.
Oh, yeah, real estate's super exciting. You know, this is a very, very crazy time. I can tell you now, because I'm getting old, I've been through a full cycle of real estate now. When you're growing up, you go through it, you don't really know about it as much, but I'd say like aware of actual real estate, like, and how it works. I've now been through a full cycle. I'm not going to say his name, but do you remember when I worked for the company in Port Washington? They hired me. I knew nothing about real estate. He wanted me for that purpose. He wanted me to work for him because I knew nothing about real estate. He hired me on the spot because I didn't know anything. He asked me if I owned properties. I said no. When it was my first year out of college, and he's like, great. He was happy that I didn't own properties. I don't know why. But like, he just loved the idea that he could train me the way he wanted to. And he had a contract with a subsidiary of a very, very large bank. And what they did was they did loss mitigation work, but it wasn't your typical loss mitigation work. They were contracted as third parties to negotiate deed in lieu of foreclosures, and they were able to write checks for like $40,000. And on the largest check I ever wrote to get a house back to the bank for a deed in lieu of foreclosure was $50,000 to a homeowner. 50 grand. These people were in default on their mortgage. They were in foreclosure. This is like the bottom. This is this isn't 2007. This was 2012. This was the aftermath of the housing crisis. So I got started in during the aftermath of it. So maybe I didn't do a full cycle because I haven't seen a crash yet. But I was alive during it. But I didn't get to feel it. But I started real estate the aftermath of the crash, and banks had no idea how to handle foreclosures. That they needed to figure out alternatives to get a house back without going through the foreclosure process, which was kind of nuts because there were that many foreclosures going on. I think in New Jersey it took 3 years to in 2012 to go through a full foreclosure. And New York was terrible. I mean, they were backlogged 5, 6, 7 years, and then you throw bankruptcies in the mix. You throw, I want a modification in the mix. It delays it. It prolongs it so much more. So it was nuts.
It was a free for all back then.
So that's when I got started. And dude, interest rates were insane then. Some of these, because I got to see all the paperwork from them. I mean, some of these
low or
high, 8, 9, 10, 12%.
Oh, Jesus.
I mean, it's insane. I will say
credit card interest rate.
The most important scene in The Big Short, which I will say, The Big Short is, I mean, again, it is a movie for your entertainment, but it did give insight on how it went down. Anybody could get a mortgage. Like you didn't need a down payment. These people sold loans to anyone. It's disgusting. Mm-hmm. And some of these people still lend money. That's why I do what I do, because I know there are people out there, and I know any person I do a loan for, I know they're not getting a loan from one of those jackoffs from 2007 writing bad paper.
Yeah, it would be interesting have been a fly on the wall during the closings of some of those things. You had people with a very modest job buying their 4th or 5th house, and it had to have been interesting.
I mean, I do have to say, though, I am relatively grateful that I really wasn't. I mean, I don't know if I was affected by the housing crisis. Like, I never, my father sold his house, I think, in 2000. I think my father sold it at the peak because he helped me. I'm not going to say he helped me. My father paid for my college. I'm not going to lie about that. And but like he sold his house to pay for my school, and I never actually felt the housing crisis. Like I was unaware of it. And that's when, we met, I think, in 2006. So like it's, I don't know if your parents felt housing crisis or not. I mean, I know they owned their place in Kingston, but I don't know if they owned both houses at the time. But did they ever say anything about the housing crisis?
No, as growing up there, I never really heard too much about it. My dad at that point had become a teacher, and he was he was kind of established at that point, so it was never really that big of a deal. And then they bought their house in Lake Katrine, and it never seemed as bad to me as it was until I finally was in college, and I was hearing people saying like, "Oh my God, like the job market," and then it wasn't until I sat down with my like guidance counselor in college. I forget what the hell they're called, but and I sat down with her, and she was like, "Oh, what do you want to do?" And I was like, "Oh, I want to get a degree in English." And she was like, "Okay." And I was like, "Oh, all right, well, then what am I doing here?" So then, and that was it. That was the end of Tommy's illustrious New Paltz career.
You write very well.
Oh, thanks.
I didn't even teach it in college. I don't even think once my school brought up the housing crisis. And like, because I took micro and macroeconomics, and not once did they really bring up America's housing crisis. it's almost like it didn't, like it happened, and then the after effect really took like 5 years to implode, because that's when people were actually starting to, because again, you don't just default, you just don't make a mortgage payment and you lose your house. Like there's a process to it. So even though the housing crisis started, people just stopped paying and they weren't able to make their mortgage payment. So it was really the aftermath years later where it actually, affected everyone. Like I would say, like it was when I got started working with where I was, I think they were going for about like maybe 6 months prior, and that's where banks were like, "Oh my God, we really fucked." And like, I mean, because they couldn't handle it themselves. They
No.
they couldn't handle all of this. I mean, like I don't know.
Well, that's
I
what
mean,
made it. That's what really defined it as a crisis, was the volume of delinquencies, the volume of foreclosures. That I think that was the biggest defining point of it. Was nobody had ever seen it happen on this mass of a scale before, and that changed the face of finance forever. I think in this country.
and so now we're at I mean, we're at the complete opposite from then. I mean, everyone's saying it's a peak, but I recall everyone saying it was a peak 2 years ago. I mean, have you, I know you throw it up, it has to come down, but I'd like to think, and listen, this is putting a lot of trust in our government. I'd like to think they're going to do what they can to make sure we don't have a housing crisis again, and a property value drop, because people are, I mean, listen, people are paying a lot of money for homes right now, but on the flip side of it, interest rates are at all-time lows. So it's almost like I don't know, it's like a happy medium, right? Like it'd be one thing if rates were 4.5% and people are paying this much for houses. So they're it's almost like there's like a, I don't know, what do they call those graphs where like you look at interest rates and you look at prices of homes and all that stuff. Like there's like, what the heck, where you're comparing rates with prices.
Well, is the graph in a line or is it in a bar?
It's like a roller coaster. I don't know. Never mind. I'm not going to focus on that. But like again, the payment is obviously like, because if rates were 4.5 right now, I don't think people would be able to buy or even 5%. Let's just assume 5. If COVID didn't happen, I actually think rates would be 4.5, 5% this summer. Like I don't think they never would have went down this low. So this is just this the rates being as low as they are. It's because of a pandemic. Okay, like let's be real for a second. That is why the rates are this low. As the market gets better, people start going back to work. The rates are going to go up. And I always said from the get-go that if COVID didn't happen last summer, I actually think rates would have been back in the fours. And then I think, because I think people still would have been buying homes.
I agree
with the higher rates. Like obviously everyone's always going to, people are always going to be buying homes, but in this particular sense, I still think that it would have been a strong buyer market, people coming in to buy. And in this coming summer, I think rates would have hit 5 if COVID didn't happen, because they have to slow things down. I think where we see all these high prices though is that you have all these people making money in New York that are like, I don't need to go into work anymore in the city. Why am I going to be in $1 million, 1,500 square foot apartment with 1 bedroom and 1 bath when I can be in an $800,000 house or a $600,000 house with a backyard?
Yeah. A solid brick wall and then a window that looks out into a homeless camp. Yeah. But I don't think you would have had the big exodus that you had from the cities if it weren't for the pandemic. And I think that's what was such a boom to the housing market right now.
And I don't think they stop. I mean, I would have to assume. I mean, we've grown accustomed to working from home. I mean, listen, we're doing a podcast. We're not doing a radio show. Like, why does anybody even need to go on the radio anymore? The radio is done.
Like, why does anybody need to physically be at a job anymore? Like, if in the times that I've gone to the grocery store, I feel like, the people, like, I don't care if I don't run into another person in my daily routine. Like, just give it to a robot. And you know what? Have a person from home control the robot. And then there you go. Then I don't have to interact with that person. That person uses a machine to interact with me. So there's at least a layer of removal there. And let's just not interact with each other anymore.
I have not had a time when I go to a grocery store where I don't need a human helping me with the robotic machine I'm trying to check out in. I can't stand those things. And I will admit, Tom, I try to avoid them at all costs. I prefer going to a human, even if the human is slower and looks like they're going to annoy me. I prefer to just have a human ring me up. I like having that interaction with another person.
As somebody who has worked in retail before, I can tell you that feeling is not mutual.
Well, I don't know. I feel that we shouldn't replace people with the automated systems, because when is it going to stop? It's going to be a point where, like,
well, I mean, it can hit that point, and at that point, I think we really need to reevaluate as a society, what constitutes a job. But I don't think we're still pretty deep in late stage capitalism at this point in this country, and I don't think we're ready to have that conversation yet.
So going back to the whole real estate piece, I do think that they're going to figure out a way to keep values up. I know Kingston, where you're at, that whole area, Hudson Valley, is absolutely nuts right now. I guess houses, like in Jersey too. I remember 2 years ago when I was looking to buy a multifamily in Kingston, which I didn't do because I was a little nervous, I'm not going to lie, but because I wasn't gonna be there. But I mean, now you put something on the market, it's gone. I mean, Kingston, you put a house on the market, it's gone in a day, 2 days. I mean, isn't that crazy?
My aunt was asking $275 for her house a couple of years ago, and there was a couple of real loose bites on it, but nobody ever actually stuck it out. And then after the pandemic, she sold it for $500,000. And granted, I mean, it's in a spot where it makes sense to me anyway. Given this point in the market where there is so much demand in this area, it's in like a historic spot. It's one of the older houses in Kingston. I mean, it adds up now. But if you had said to me 3 years ago that was going to happen, I'd have been like, yeah, okay.
It's insane. It is unfortunate for people that are able to afford buying a 300, 350 house. I mean, in New Jersey, it's like now you're looking. I mean, really, it's like you want to be in Bergen or Essex County. I mean, not Bergen. I mean, I don't know. You need at least 400. You have to be able to afford $400,000.
Time out for a second, though. I do want to say that I think it's pretty funny today, being Earth Day. I've gotten 14 emails, and I sat here and counted the goddamn things, which is why I know I got 14 of them from different companies that are saying, they're using Earth Day as a reason to, promote whatever products they got. And the one that really stood out to me was Barnes & Noble was using Earth Day to promote selling books. And what do you use to make a book? You have to cut down a tree to make the paper to make a book. If you think about it, a book is not very earth friendly. So why are you going to use Earth Day as the time to market your company? Meanwhile, all of these corporations, right, represent around 40% of all of the carbon emissions in the world. And you're going to lecture me on Earth Day? Apple News is going to send me a thing. Oh, happy Earth Day. Here's how you can be a better recycler. Me? Like, the onus is not on me. The onus is on you, Apple News, because you just not only did you waste my fucking time, but you sent me a bunch of bullshit on all these coupons that I can get from all these different companies that are making things that are not environmentally friendly. So I think we as a whole, I think corporate activism can be best summarized by things like this, like Earth Day, where Barnes & Noble says, celebrate the earth. Let's cut down some trees and make some books. Now, I'm not advocating for no books, but what I am saying is that corporate activism is going to sit there and tell me that it's Earth Day, I can be a better recycler, and that I should be also a better consumer. And they're going to use Earth Day to peddle products that are in the end not very environmentally friendly. It's a level of hypocrisy that I think really only a corporation could do it. Because if I saw a person who was like, if there was a person standing right in front of me and he goes, "Hey, it's Earth Day. You want a fucking bottle of whale oil?" Like, you'd punch that person in the face. You'd be like, you are a dipshit. You're a hypocrite, and you're sitting here giving me something that I don't need, and it's terribly sourced, and you're a terrible person. But a corporation can get away with that because there's no one person responsible for it. And that's my rant for today.
It's very true. It's just like every day, like there's always something. And what these companies need to do is feel relevant. Because if they don't say anything, then you're going to get that one person who maybe has like 1,000 followers. I can't believe Barnes and Noble didn't do anything on Earth Day.
Barnes and Noble hates the Earth.
And now Barnes and Noble needs to, we are so sorry that we did not say anything on Earth Day. And then they're going to give this apologetic email, but obviously they don't mean it. It's just,
you get like the one slighted cashier who comes out as like a whistleblower, like the supervisor said Barnes and Noble made us strangle a macaque monkey before every shift. Like, just go on these ridiculous things about it.
I mean, while we're on that, it's just, you have to do something. You just have to. You got to stay relevant. And then if you do one thing wrong, you get their apologetic email. It's like, all right, they apologized because they really meant this. That's why, like, I can't stand when people, like, you say something, right? I don't care what it is. You say something wrong and then you apologize for it. It's almost like, can you please stop apologizing? Like, why do we need to get an apology? Why are we asking for apologies? We just want them to say they're sorry. I mean, if anybody actually thinks that they're truly sorry, I mean, you're stupid.
Yeah.
You're just stupid.
You
mean their apology.
Opinion other than profit margin says.
I've called people some terrible things, and then immediately after I say I'm sorry. Honestly, I probably meant it at the time. In their face, I've meant it. So 5 minutes later, I'm sorry. Like, I meant it at the time. I was angry. My angry Chris did mean it, but now I've calmed down. So I'm sorry. So am I truly sorry, or am I just calm and I just acted upon my anger? Angry Chris was upset. And whatever angry Chris just called you to your face, he probably meant.
You're just Bruce Banner apologizing for the actions of the Hulk. Angry Chris ripped off his pants and turned green.
and it's one thing saying something out of anger, but when people actually, so I don't have a Twitter, and I don't think I'll ever get a Twitter, because there's a lot of times where I find myself writing stuff like as like a status or something like that on Facebook. I'm like, let me not share this, even though I'm probably going to delete it. But do you know what's that?
Do that with emails too? Like, have you ever written out an email that was just absolutely like scathing?
Yes.
And then backspace it, you're like, no, okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know me, like I don't have the best grammar. Like I'm not an English student like you, where I'm not. I need to double check what I write, because if I don't, it looks terrible. But if you take the time to write something, like, you can't be like, oh, I apologize. Like, if you wrote it, you tweeted it, you sent an email about it, like, you meant it. Like, there's no, oh, I was acting upon, like, no. That means then you have actually serious problems, where, like, you're blacking out and you're tweeting something or writing an email that's very angry. You know what you're doing. Unless, like, I have, like, some weird thing I don't even know about, but I know when I'm writing a nasty text or a nasty email, I mean it. I'm not blacking out. I know what I'm doing.
Right.
So I think with Barnes and Noble on Earth Day, they have to do something, even though you're absolutely right. But not many people probably think that Barnes and Noble, all right, that's very good of them. I mean, at least they came out with the Kindle, right?
Barnes and Noble had the Nook. Amazon had the Kindle.
Oh, fuck Amazon. All right, so they had the Nook. I guess
I will say, for a while, the Nook, I feel like, was their superior product, not only because it was a tablet, but because back when LimeWire and Aries were king, I used to torrent PDFs of books. And so I would argue that my theft of books was better for the environment than buying printed ones, newly printed ones on freshly fallen timber. So suck it, Barnes and Noble.
So you should. I mean, you tweet, don't you? Or do you have a Twitter or no?
No.
I was gonna say maybe you should tweet Barnes and I'll be like that. This is a little, it's ironic when you celebrate Earth Day. But the unfortunate thing is though that if Barnes and Noble stops printing books, then they got to shut down their big stores. I mean, Barnes and Noble's a big store. I mean, it's a warehouse of a store. Like Barnes and Nobles aren't small, So like you get rid of a Barnes and Noble, big piece of real estate that honestly, who else is going to go into an old Barnes and Noble? It's a lot of employees that they're going to get rid of. And I will say, Barnes and Noble not only has Barnes and Noble employees, but they typically have a coffee shop or something else there that rents a little space, which gives more jobs. So honestly, we should all say, you know what, Barnes and Noble, continue cutting down trees and printing more books because you are giving back to the community with your jobs and rented real estate, which ultimately affect everything else surrounding that Barnes and Noble.
Sure. And most of the profits are getting funneled to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, probably. So
yeah, exactly. When was the last time you bought a book?
Oh, Christ. Wow. The last time I bought a book was probably from Amazon. But I don't think Amazon printed it. I think it was somebody else who was selling on Amazon. So they're one of those fringe companies that Amazon hasn't squashed and taken their spot yet.
Yeah, I can't stand Amazon. I'm so tired. I'm like the news I'm seeing lately. I saw a picture of Jeff Bezos's jet. It's like a giant spaceship. And then I just read an article that his mansion that he just bought is the size of a city. Like, I don't know what to say because I actually don't buy Amazon. I don't know the last time I made a purchase off Amazon. And you hear, like, millennials are so anti-corporation, and yet they want things so fast that they buy it off Amazon. And they praise Jeff Bezos.
Well, that's it. You were talking before about shitty Bond villains. Jeff Bezos is like a Daniel Craig Bond villain.
That fucking guy from Californication would be the one to play him too.
Yeah, yeah, the bald guy.
Yeah, Evan Chandler. He can be Jeff Bezos in a movie.
Yeah,
but no, I'll tell you, like it's one of those things. Like you have a whole group of people who are so anti-corporation, blah blah blah, and yet they're the biggest supporters of Amazon because they want things now. I get it. Like you drive out, you go to Best Buy or something like that, which is another corporation or something for an electronic. But I feel like supporting Best Buy is almost supporting more local than Amazon, as silly as that sounds.
In a way, at least Best Buy has the decency to have a brick and mortar store, which means that they have to physically have people in an area working at the store. And then because it's a store and the public is allowed inside, they don't have carte blanche to just run those people who work there totally ragged, to the point where they're making them pits and bottles and stuff.
I just find it funny that most of the people who are anti-corporation just buy from Amazon and like they don't think to themselves like, I love Amazon. Like, but they don't see the bigger picture. But
well, I would argue that that's the same place where the idea of corporate activism comes from, where these people are like, oh well, there's a big problem here, and like I'm only a tiny part of it, so it's fine what I do, but I think everybody else should I think we should all get together and like really make sure we don't do this. But I mean, until we do that, I'm just going to do it. So it's like you are kind of exactly the problem.
And what's funny is normally I'm somebody that is like that. I think that way, and I usually don't stick to my guns. But Amazon's been the one company where I'm like, you know what, I'm sticking to my guns on this.
I will say because I am one of those people that I just talked about, and I'm not, I'm sure like most people who are probably like that do have some degree of self-awareness, and I have not refrained from using Amazon during this whole time, even though objectively, if anybody asked me about Amazon, I'm like, Amazon's terrible, but I will say you have stuck to your guns about Amazon, and it is more than I thought you were going to do. I'm proud of you for doing that, buddy.
Oh, thank you, buddy. I mean, actually, if you look at their prices and you do shop it, I've always found Amazon to be more expensive.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, if you actually have something in mind, right, and you look it up and try to find it somewhere, I actually think Amazon ends up being a little bit more expensive.
Yeah.
And then I'm also willing to throw 5% more on something if I don't have to buy it. Again, I actually usually don't buy anything. Like, if Amazon's the only spot, I'm like, fuck it, I'll find something else.
No,
Like, if like I wanted to buy a hammer and Amazon was the cheapest place to buy a hammer, I'll buy a hammer somewhere else. Like, I'll find it. Like, let's just say no one else had a hammer and it was only Amazon that had a hammer. I'll buy a screwdriver and I'll make use of a hammer out of a screwdriver.
You start punching it. This is for you, Jeff Bezos.
But dude, no, it's insane. So like, this guy has a spaceship jet. I think there's a pool on it. Like, are you kidding me?
Pool in a plane. I mean, why not? Honestly, if I was as rich as Jeff Bezos, I would be doing. First off, I'd be doing so much cooler stuff that Jeff Bezos is doing. But I feel like a lot of my things would be in the vein of like, put a pool in my plane. Why the hell not? Like, oh, I'm gonna put an airport in my house. Fuck it, why not? Put a bowling alley in my car.
I guess if I were a billionaire, trying to think of what I would do with my first $1 billion. I guess I do stupid stuff too, but like, I kind of try to be a little bit more off the radar, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, like, when you're as rich as somebody like Jeff Bezos, who like, for all intents and purposes, he's got like unlimited wealth. Eventually, like, you got to get bored. Like, I mean, there's only so many times, like, I don't know, like, eventually, I mean, like, I would just start doing. I would like just like go up to the president in like broad daylight and be like, how much do I realistically have to pay to just murder a person in broad daylight? like, just see what he says. I mean, what are they gonna do? What are they gonna arrest you? Like, no.
I guess he would get bored. I mean,
yeah.
if you're that bored, you know what you could do? Pay a little bit more to your employees.
Sure, you could do that. You could probably volunteer or anything else, but I mean, you don't get rich from charity.
You know what I do hate though? I hate the people that are just like, well, he worked really hard for his money. It's just like, yeah, I'm sure. Listen, don't get me wrong. I'm sure he worked hard, but like, fucking jet with a pool and a mansion the size of a small city. Like,
yeah.
I don't like. There are places in my house, which my house is a decent size, but there are places here I haven't even walked into. So imagine having like a mansion the size of a small city. Like, this probably like, you can literally have somebody living in a room and you don't even know about it. You ever seen the movie?
Yeah, you would have to hire people to like. You'd have to hire staff to like run your house for you because like there's no realistic way that you're gonna visit all the parts of your house like frequently enough where like somebody couldn't just move in and like live in the corner. Like,
maybe that's what we should do.
Yeah, we should squat Jeff Bezos's house. I like that idea.
Yeah, but you know what? We'd end up getting killed and no one would actually know about it.
I bet that was another thing Jeff Bezos did. Like, yeah, I'm just gonna make a body room. We just get thrown on top of the Amazon body pile.
It wouldn't surprise me if he killed people. He has that,
He has that look, right? Like, there's a soullessness like in his face. Like, I feel like he would kill and he would look at you like Elijah Wood in Sin City, like with the kind of grin where he's just there watching your life expire.
It is what it is, because you know what? No matter what, in my lifetime, I'll never see Amazon fail, which kind of sucks. That's something that I would like to see that. Would like to see that fail. But at the same time, I'm super grateful that they haven't created their own mortgage company yet. I am super nervous that one day there'll be Amazon financing and they'll do exactly what they did with the diaper company, and like, let's just say the average interest rate is 3%. They just come to the market, be like, come to us, 0.5% mortgages, literally put everyone out of business. And then one day it'll be, we're just going to spike them up to like 8% when everybody's shut down.
Well, you'd like to think that as inept as, the government it can be at times, you would like to think that, there would be enough safeguards and regulations in place to make it so that weren't possible. But then again, you never know.
But I am nervous about Amazon actually creating a mortgage sector. I mean, imagine if Amazon mortgage, people are totally going to go to it just because, I can get a mortgage tomorrow, get delivered to me in a day.
Yeah. I'm waiting for Amazon to start selling houses online like Sears used to do, where they sell you like the kit house and it went up, you could assemble it in like 3 weeks or something.
Like a modular home?
Yeah, kind of like that. Like they basically sell you all the stuff and then you just hire a builder to like build it all for you. I think when I've seen the videos, and I'm sure you've probably seen them too, of the 3D printed houses where they like have like a mold and they like pour the concrete in and it's like a concrete house and the walls are concrete and everything. And I think once that hits a point where it's actually like, feasible on a larger scale, I say Amazon somehow gets into that. Like Amazon owns the machines that print the models or something like that. I see Amazon getting involved in that.
I mean, that's what people are going to need. They're going to have to buy land and they're going to have to put a house on the land. There's not enough, there's not enough houses. And there's a ton of land still available. It just needs to be broken up and zoned out for purchasing. I mean, land got expensive too. It needs, some of the government-owned land needs to be broken up. I mean, they got a lot. There's nothing to do with it. Like if you've been on I-95 or I-80, there's so much land still available. Why isn't it getting developed? And modular homes are going to be, I do believe, a thing of the future. I mean, contractors are stupid expensive now.
Well, you've also got to look at, there are actually a fair amount of houses out there, but the problem is that buying them, there's a lot of barriers to entry, and cost is obviously one of them. But the other thing is, they're being bought up by hedge funds. Right now, hedge funds are big into the real estate market because obviously they found that stocks are somewhat susceptible to manipulation. So I was watching a news report the other day saying that your next landlord could be a hedge fund, and they had the testimony of tenants of places where a hedge fund bought out the property, and then a property management firm works for the hedge fund. And as you can imagine, the results have been kind of disastrous in terms of things not getting fixed and just general upkeep kind of going down the toilet, because to these hedge funds, it's a sheet of properties. It's not a place where somebody lives. They don't care as long as there's money coming in, and the money coming in is more than what's going out to keep the property up. They don't give a shit. So that's I fear that is a symptom of the late stage capitalism that I was talking about before, and that's a frightening future to think that these giant. It's not a bank that owns your house, a bank that has to, somewhat answer for the way it invests its money and the way it spends its money, and it has to kind of show where they keep their money, and they're held responsible for it. These hedge funds don't operate by the same rules and don't have the same consequences for these kind of things.
And they can survive a price drop. So if they lose $100,000 or $200,000 on a dozen properties, they're going to be okay because they're in it for the long. They're in it for the long haul.
It's true.
Some of these hedge funds aren't even they're foreign hedge funds. So now you have China buying up a bunch of these houses too, and foreign entities owning the American real estate, and then
now you've got a foreign hedge fund that owns your property, and it's the call center for the property management company is outsourced, so you've got like 4 different continents involved now in just trying to fix your gutter that fell on your porch. God, what a nightmare.
Yeah, that'd be ridiculous. I don't want to be part of that.
Well, that's the future, buddy.
Maybe I'll be dead. So we want to thank you all for listening to our podcast pilot. This was our first episode, so don't judge a pilot by its first episode. So next week we have a great interview lined up for you all. We're going to give you an actual update on the mortgage world And let's see what current events pop up over the next week for Tommy to give us a little bit of gossip on. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
See you next week, everybody.